Hello, everyone. Welcome to the OG Original Glory podcast. I'm your host, John Carlson, and with me is my boy, KD. KD,
What's up?
What's up, man?
Dude, it is so hot right now.
It is hot.
On my way over here, in my truck, and the AC works well in my truck, and still my phone gave me the emergency overheat in the cab of the truck driving over here. So I had to hold the phone directly on the vent for 5 minutes. It's so hot.
Oh, man. You know it's hot in Scottsdale when you have legit air conditioning and your phone's overheating. That is fantastic. We're going to welcome our studio guest here in a moment, but he is smoking some brisket, and he was looking at the temperature remotely on an app on his phone, and he said he was really proud of it because when you smoke something, for those of you who smoke meat, who barbecue meat, you know that you enjoy the nuance, you enjoy taking pride in it. You take pride in your smoke ring around the meat when it's finished and all this stuff, right? And so he's showing us his temperature on his meat right now. He's like, it's at a perfect 185. And we're like, it's 185 degrees outside.
That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like.
Oh, it's bananas. But that's why we have pools and
there are hot tubs now.
HVAC. So, yeah. But thank you for joining us this week on the OG Original Glory podcast. Again, I'm your host, John Carlson, here with my boy, KD. And this week we have in our studio a special guest. His name is Peter.
Welcome.
And we're really thankful to have you, Peter. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm really grateful to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, man. Seriously, it's good to have you in here. I've been looking forward to trying to wrangle you in here and get you to share your story with us. So thanks for being here. Along those lines, if you would tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you live, you have a wife and kids, what do you do for a living, that kind of thing.
Well, I'm married to Mary Catherine Stockton, formerly a savage. Yes, I tamed a savage. And I have 4 daughters, each one prettier than the next. And so they're 14, 13, 11, and 8. So I have Katie is my wife, then Katie, Kenna, Kinsey, Coley, Kyler. So the five Ks. I'm a board certified emergency physician and did that for a while and decided to try and really get serious about obeying God, and ended up in Honduras with my family for 5 years, and came back, and it's pretty amazing what I'm doing now. I'm part owner of some hospitals, 2 hospitals, kind of a smaller hospital, East Valley Emergency Room and Hospital, and then was Phoenix ER and hospital, but we just HOPD'd it. So now it's an outpatient division of the first hospital. So small micro hospital. So building a third, that's exciting and terrifying.
Congrats.
At the same time.
It's really cool, man. And yeah, you have awesome family and an awesome story. And one of the things that I love about your story and your career path is we see the intersection between calling, vocation, ministry, all those things. So I'm looking forward to diving into Peter's story a bit, but we would love it if you would take us back into your story. Maybe, at a starting point when you're a little bit younger, and then just kind of progress through there.
Well, I was born an oversized child. I had to come out the sunroof. Do you want me to go back that far? So I have a strong belief that my mother had gestational diabetes because we were some big boys. My brother was 12 pounds and I was 10'9". So the smallest kid was 10'2", baby-wise. So Dang. My dad was also a large individual, so I might have played into that. But anyway, so born in Tucson, Arizona, and then my dad was military as a commander in the Navy. Okay. So, but he did that through the public health service as a physician. So not kind of the classical thing. But then my grandfather was a full bird in the Air Force. So military on military, we moved every 5 years, just like clockwork. And even after my dad was out of the military, we still moved. So lived in Tucson for the first 5 years, then Novato, California, so Northern California, like San Marin County, for next 5 years, then back to Phoenix, and then after that, my parents and everybody moved to Oregon, Southern Oregon, so to the Grants Pass, or Grass Pants, as I like to call it. And so then from there, I was kind of on my own. So then I went to Colorado, lived there for a while, back to Phoenix, then kind of all over the place. Ended up in as a not an indentured missionary, but an opportune missionary in South Africa for a couple of years, and then came back, went into medical school, back to Oregon, and back to Tucson, and all over the place. But those are kind of the big things.
Mm-hmm.
And, medical school, University of Arizona, residency in Pennsylvania for emergency medicine, and then back here to work. And I worked all around the valley, multiple different places.
Wow, we're lucky. That's back-to-back guests that are natives to Arizona.
Yeah, I know.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, back-to-back guys in the studio, right?
Yep.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. For our listeners, Arizona has a lot of transplants. So
they do. Well, and we've actually had 3 total. I mean, we're, depending on how all these roll out and everything, we'll have had, by the time Peter's episode airs, we'll have Eric's episode and Steve's episode.
Mm-hmm.
Steve's also a native and he goes way back.
I love it.
Because he was
homegrown
in his 70s. Yeah. And he's old school Phoenix, like with a dad who was on the fire squad here. Is like a fire.
That's right.
He's an FK.
Fire department captain. Yeah. FK.
So
why'd you choose Phoenix, or did Phoenix choose you, kind of?
Oh man, it's more about where my wife's family is. I mean, that's the grounding prerogative. Went to high school at Phoenix Christian High School. My wife works at Scottsdale Christian Academy, and all my kids go there, so it's fun. Go Eagles.
Yeah, go Eagles. That's right. Yeah, our daughters are the same age and in the same class, which is really cool. So where is God in the early years? Did you grow up in a household where your parents were believers? Not? What was the deal with? I'm assuming yes with the Christian high school, but
so until I was 12, pretty churched, I would say, and rule follower, firstborn. Got to take care of everybody else and make sure everything's good. Really, really praying, doing all the kind of the right things, knew all the Bible answers. Then around 12, I distinctly remember catching my dad in a lie.
Mm.
And it's this crazy thing. I can see his face and his persistence in the lie, thinking that I didn't know that I had caught him, and that made me. That shook my framework for everything. Kind of messed up what I thought was true, what it wasn't true, and began to question everything. And rapidly, I like to say, I grabbed hold of the steering of my own ship and drove it right into the rocks repeatedly. Mm-hmm. So from 12 to about 24, I tried to make my own way, touch the fire, see if it was hot, kind of dumb stuff, drinking, everything that you can think of that was wrong. I wanted to make sure it wasn't the right way. And,
right.
And after disastering my life enough, I pretty much, and the crazy part about through all that is I mean, I was doing things that were illegal. I was doing things that were immoral. I was doing all sorts of not great things, like old man stuff. And when I look back through that time, every time I was going to get in really serious trouble, I mean, jail time, federal offense kind of trouble, something would happen. Something would like one of the funny things is, I don't know if I even should say some of this stuff on air, but like, say I stole something that was very large and it was in the grand theft range. The person who I stole it from ended up saying to the policeman who was there, who after he had caught me was like, Actually, I think that I think this might be a different guy, not this guy that stole the thing. And
The cop said that?
no, the guy I stole from.
Oh.
And while the policeman was there, and the policeman was like, "What do you mean? Like you said you caught him red-handed?" Like, and he's like, "Well, no. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's a different person." He's like looking at me. He's like,
Couldn't be this guy.
I think it's a different guy, right? And I was like, "Yeah, it's a different guy." And he's like, "Yeah, because this guy mows my lawn." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "This guy mows my lawn every week for a year." And I was like, "Yes, this guy mows the lawn every week for a year," and just stuff like that. I mean, and then as I got older, other things would happen. It was crazy. Like I don't. There's so many things, but
So when you said at the onset of starting to tell some of those stories, when you said old man stuff, just to clarify for our listeners, you mean the old man that has been put to death by the cross of Christ, not like an old guy,
buried, done,
dead.
Do not want to go back there.
Yeah.
That's a hard pass on going back to that stuff. So
yeah, and the reason I ask is one, to clarify for the listeners and everything like that. Jesus Christ put the old man to death by his cross. That's one of the beautiful things about being a new creation in Christ, is the old man has literally been put to death. I mean, Paul says it very clearly in Romans. But we were just talking about this last night. We were at a friend's house and we took communion, and we were rejoicing in that. Essentially, we were having this whole conversation that it's amazing that we get to live the life that we get to live in the kingdom of God because Christ has put the old man to death.
Right.
I mean, it's a phenomenal thing. And the broken body of Jesus Christ, him on the cross, is what accomplishes that. And when we do that, and we take communion, we eat the bread. And you and I were talking before the podcast about eating unto the Lord. Eating is an act of worship, and praise. That we're doing that in remembrance of that that's a part of it, right? I mean, like the cross accomplishes so much. But one of the big things that accomplishes is it puts the old man to death. So that's why I kind of highlight that. I think that's a cool expression.
Sorry, I threw that Christian vernacular in there.
No, but we're trying to be intentional about defining things and everything, and so it's all good. I mean, throw it out there. I think it's just it's good to define some of that. Explain how we see that operationally.
Yeah, for sure.
In living the in Christ and with God life. So you were regaling us with tales of grand theft.
Terribleness.
Yes.
So anyway, so when I think back on it, one of the major callings in my life are specifically my wife. Every good thing that has come out of my life has been in direct obedience to God, and He puts authorities in your life, and when you listen to them, and when you seek Him, literally seek Him first, and just do what you know He's wanting you to do, it gets wild fast. It really does. You end up in South Africa without a plan, teaching missionary kids and being a missionary without believing in God, and just all sorts of very crazy things.
So is that your story? I mean, like, is that essentially?
When I actually got saved, I was 25 years old.
Okay.
24, almost 25, and my dad said, "Hey, like you've literally wrecked your life. You're living in an apartment with a guy you don't know, and you're working like a job you don't know, and you keep saying you want to be a doctor, but you're just taking like one class at a time for undergrad, and you're going to be 40 by the time you even get to apply, and you're just not doing anything. Like, why don't you quit your job and come with me for 2 weeks to South Africa? We're going to go visit your Aunt Charmin."
Oh, wow.
So it's my dad's sister, Charmin. And she was a principal of at the time she was principal of a missionary school, a Foursquare Christian missionary school in South Africa. So I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." And he's like going to pay for everything. So get my ticket to go down there, and lost all my luggage, which happens in international flights. And so I had literally nothing to wear. And I came from, we went during the winter, so it's summer down there. and my dad calls up my aunt and says, "Hey, I'm going to be late. It's going to be like 3 days before I get down there." And I was like, "Wow, that's not great." So my aunt takes me to this like store and gets me clothes, and we head up there. And she's like, "Hey, by the way, I need someone to teach kindergarten," and which was sub B there, which is they have the English system, so sub A, sub B.
What's that mean?
So sub A is preschool. It's just they call the grades different things.
Oh, okay.
So you have sub A, sub B, then you have first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Then when you get to sixth, then they start calling them other things too. There's like standard 7, anyway, and that's like the high school and stuff like that. So
that's interesting.
So they have it's just the English system, which is all over the world too. So, but it was really fun. So they had these sub B characters, right? And then so then my dad calls back like 3 days later and says, "Hey, I'm not going to make it." And I was like, "All right, well that stinks," because I wanted my dad to be kind of my partner and hanging out with me. And at that point in our relationship, we'd really become pretty good friends. And so that was a bummer. But I got to, and so Sharma said, "Well, the next week and a half, can you just teach this class?" So I'm teaching the class, and then 2 days before I'm supposed to leave, she says, "Hey, please, if you can you stay? Can you just stay and teach this class? And then I'd also have you do like history and science in the afternoon for the older kids, for the standard 7s." And so I was like, "Oh man, I really like teaching. Like this is actually really cool. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to do." Not even believing in God at this point. Like this is still me trying to steer that ship and not hit the rocks. Although they're everywhere, those rocks, when you're steering. It's real hard.
Very true.
They're magnetized, in fact, and you got a metal boat. So yeah. So I'm going. I'm literally. My aunt says, "Well, will you pray about it?" Right. And so this is my first lesson in obedience, and I say, "I'm not a Christian. Like, how can I work at a Christian school and like teach these kids about Jesus and basically not believe what I'm selling? I'm not, ethically, I don't want to do that, right? Even though I have almost no morals at this point in my life." So
that would be wrong.
Yeah, so it's like, I'm
hey, man's got to have principles.
I'm being all self-righteous as I'm like committing crimes in the last whatever. So then I said, "Okay, out of respect to you, I'll pray about it. I'll pray about it." And I'm thinking, man, I'm praying to a God I don't believe in. This is literally ridiculous. So I go down to my little house and I kneel on the bed and I put my hands up, a little tent in my hands, and I say, "God, I don't believe in. Should I stay or should I go? I should go. Cool, great talk." Just super disrespectful, super bad, and then the next morning, I was reading a book about teaching and about getting on kids' levels and how you shouldn't loom over them. You should always kind of be low and maintain eye contact, and the kids tend to be more receptive when you ally with them. And I was like, this teaching stuff has got a lot to it. I really enjoy it. And I remember, okay, I got to pray too. I can say I prayed twice. If I pray twice, like that'll be like really obedient. So I got down again and I fold my hands on the bed and I say, again, second time, "God, I don't believe in." So I'm just basically talking to myself. Should I stay or should I go? Cool. Like, great talk. Amazing. I hear you so clearly. Who's not speaking, who doesn't have any kind of power, kind of thing. And I get up and I'm walking to go tell my aunt that I'm going to leave in 2 days. I'm not going to stay and do this. And she's to find somebody else. And as I'm walking up, the kids are wearing light blue tops and gray, like dark gray, charcoal gray pants or skirts. And I walk through the courtyard and there's like 100 kids because school's about to start. And I'm going around the edge and I see this kid lock eyes with me. And did you want me to tell the story? Because I'm going to cry. Because I cry every time I tell the story.
Oh, you're in it now, buddy. We're here with you, though.
We're in it with you, too.
I always forget about this. So I lock eyes with this kid, and he drops a ball that he's carrying, and he starts kind of weaving in between the kids as I'm coming around the edge. And he's weaving through these kids. He's not breaking eye contact with me. And I thought, oh, he's gonna tell me something. This is important. I'm gonna get down on his level. So I kind of kneel down, and this kid hits me just like a cannonball and wraps his arms around me and leans in and whispers in my ear 3 times, "I love you. I love you. I love you." To this day, I cannot deny that was God speaking directly to me.
Yep.
And just to be a little funny and put a cap on it is that I had that kid in class the next year, and that is not that kid. That kid, I literally watched him tell another kid, "Give me the soccer ball." Kid said no, and he punched him in the face. So that kid does not have the "I love you" spirit. And so I remember I was bawling and crying, and I went up to my aunt, and I, just, "I guess I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna teach these kids, and God just told me," and just the ugly crying. So, anyway, that's how and then I proceeded for the next 2 years to be like the worst missionary ever. I had.
What do you mean by that? The worst missionary ever?
Well, so I don't know anything about the Bible except for when I was 12, right? And so there's like all sorts of funny things. I had one of the other missionaries says to me, "What's your favorite Bible verse?" And I say, Isaiah 94:8, because I don't have a favorite Bible verse. Like, I haven't read the Bible since I was 12. And she's like, "Well, Isaiah doesn't have that many chapters."
Like, I'm pretty sure they just found some new scrolls in the Dead Sea or something. You're just not up to speed.
So then I said some other random verse, and they're like, oh yeah, I meant not 97, I meant 37, 8. And she's like, oh, that makes more sense. And she like looks it up, and it's something like, "And Egypt has these mighty chariots, and they will roll over the Israelites, and there will be much murder," or something. And I'm like, "That's the one I like. That speaks to me." It's like, it's great. And she's like, "Well, okay," so it was published in her like little newsletter from home about me. And so that was one. Then I had a really drunk guy tell me that he said, "Hey, give me some money for beer." And I said, "No, I care about you, but I don't want to give you any money." And he said, "Well, do you care about me like a father to a son?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, it says in the Bible that the father won't give, if the son asks for a fish, he won't give him a snake." And I was like, "It doesn't say that in the Bible."
You're like, "Here's a rock, though."
He's like, I bet you a case of like a 6-pack of beer. And I was like, "It's not in the Bible." And then he's like, "Okay." And then I went back and looked it up, and I went and bought him a 6-pack of beer as a missionary, which was like, in that culture, that was really bad too. I got an earful from the rest of the missionaries about buying beer for people. So then I didn't want to add on top of it that I broke my word. That was a steep learning curve. So
That is hilarious.
it's pretty bad.
Oh man. So where do you go from there? So you spent a couple of years over there. World's worst missionary.
Yeah.
All right.
WWM. So I come back, and then I decided, I really think I need to be. I really feel like being a teacher. So I looked at being a teacher, and I didn't think that ended up being for me. But then I wanted to go back to my first love, which was being a doctor. And when I was 5, I remember a lady coming to the door and just knocking on the door and saying, and my mom answered the door, and she said, she's crying and weeping, and she says, "Is Dr. Stockton there?" And comes in and just grabs my dad and starts kissing him on the face, and she's like crying and all this stuff. And he had paid for her son to go to the hospital and get antibiotics, and he had meningitis, and basically saved this kid's life when nobody else would listen to her. And I remember my mom looking at this lady like, "Hey, can you get off my husband?" You're like literally kissing him, and my dad's trying to like respectfully, gently move her off of him.
Right.
But I just thought that's so powerful that you can change somebody's life. Like, so I thought that's pretty cool to have that power in somebody's life to change their life. So that's been something that's been with me my whole life. And then, when I go to work now, if I don't get some of those moments where I feel like I get to change somebody's life at work, that's a mission not accomplished. So I feel very called to do that. I'm called to be a physician, called to take care of people, called to show them that people that in that setting, someone actually can care about them. and meet them in their need, which I'm hoping that is an example of Christ, because that's what He's done for me my whole life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is the transition from missionary to medical school look like? What do those years look like?
So I go to, I'm in Oregon, and I have God pretty directly tell me to go to Arizona to finish, and I go down, and my father graduated from University of Arizona Medical School. So did my aunt and my uncle. They actually got married there. So I go down, I start going to University of Arizona and apply, and I get this is the other obedient thing is this how I met my wife is I go to my other aunt, my Aunt Karen, calls me and says, "Hey, you're going to do Young Life." And I was like, "What's Young Life? I don't know what that is." And she says, "Well, you're going to meet this guy for lunch." And I go meet this kid, Sam Partain, who is one of the most delightful people on the whole planet. And he says, "Well, I think you'd be okay. Why don't you go to this address tomorrow night?" So I go to that address, and I'm all just trying to be obedient, right? Like I'm in the Word. I'm talking to God every day, listening for God, and waiting for my next adventure kind of to happen while I'm trying to get into medical school. And so I go, and we have this Young Life is totally my thing because it's crazy, it's nuts, but it's trying to get a relationship with people and being awkward for Jesus. And I am soup's good at awkward. I could ask my girls. So I that was their vernacular as well, like soups, totes, soups, obs.
Yep.
So I go to this thing, and there's this really pretty girl, and the whole time I'm trying to not think about girls and not think about relationships because I'm just focusing on the relationship that matters the most to me, which is Christ. And that was like a theme for that year. And I see this girl, she's just super good looking, and I'm carrying some speakers down the back stairs. There's like 2-story stairs out the back, like on the side of the building. And she's at the bottom. She turns around and she hits me with this like 1,000,000-watt smile. I just think, wow, that girl is really attractive, and just smiling at me. And I'm like, I don't have. This is not the time. This is not. I don't want this to happen. Like this. Why is that girl so good looking? And then I realize she's smiling at her boyfriend behind me.
No.
So
Are you serious?
yeah.
Oh
so
my gosh.
That's brutal.
Worst nightmare.
Totally brutal.
yeah,
So awkward.
He ended up being not a great kid, so he was out of the picture pretty quick. She got rid of him, and then I just started a friendship with her. And for about a year and a half, we were leaders at that same club, and then took kids up to Woodleaf, and then I heard from one of her friends that she liked me, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And so super creeper style, like I found out who her parents were, and like talked to people about her parents to make sure that she had good parents, and I don't know, just all kinds of stuff like that. But then God made it pretty clear that we were supposed to get married. Our first kiss was under a double rainbow. So I only know one person in charge of rainbows.
Oh, wow. Where was it? Where were you guys?
Tucson,
double rainbow, huh?
yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You and David are both Wildcats.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I went to the U of A too.
You guys have that in common. Not to make you zigzag too much in your story, but you said something that kind of jumped out at me that I was curious about. You said, I spent a lot of time in God's Word and then listening for His voice and listening for Him to give you your next assignment, I think is what you said. Is that something that you cultivated as a missionary, that you learned how to do, be in His Word, listen for His voice? What did that look like?
So actually I said next adventure.
You said yes, which is a much better word. Thank you.
So
yes.
My couple things that I do know about myself. I know I'm horrible at follow-up. I mean, horrible. Like you tell me to do something. If I don't do it right then, it's not getting done. I have a really good memory, but it's for the stuff that I'm passionate about, and stuff that I don't care about, I have a really bad memory for. So there's some like faults. But one thing that I absolutely do is I do fun and adventure well. If you wanna be fun and have an adventure, I'm your guy. I love spearfishing. I love we just me and my cousins and my brothers all went up to Alaska and went salmon fishing, and we were walking around carrying guns, looking for bears, and doing fun adventure stuff. But
you and Katie are going to be besties before you know it.
Yeah, I love to hunt for sure.
yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to do elk hunting. I've never done elk hunting, so that's my next adventure, I think. So
Yeah.
Plus it cooks good.
Oh, it's delicious. Yeah, my father-in-law is a great hunter, and he's hasn't been able to go out in a few years. But when we were dating, my wife and I, he always had some elk meat for us, and would turn that into jerky, and so good. So learned a lot from him about hunting, and it's just a lot of trial and error.
That's awesome. Sounds like a pretty good workout too, honestly. If you do kill somebody, you got to carry it back.
It's got to be, right?
Yeah.
Thousands of pounds. 1,000 pounds of meat.
Yeah, those are big animals.
It's fun. It's adventure.
Adventure. So you're good at adventure. I'm thankful that you're raising the topic of adventure. And what else?
Well, I always tell people what's the most scary, terrifying prayer that you can pray.
What is that? What is that prayer?
God, today I'm going to do what you want me to do. Not what I want to do, but what you want to do. And that will make you move to Honduras with your family, even though it's the murder capital of the world.
Mm-hmm.
That will make you buy a hospital and leverage yourself into oblivion. It'll make you do just really, really crazy things. And all of it is so that this actually brings up another thing. I am actually really bad at listening to God.
Okay.
And so I practice it as much as I can, and I try it as much as I can, and I'm still horrible at it. So I basically need God to hit me with a 2x4 every once in a while to tell me I'm going the wrong direction. But luckily for me, those are moments where those are teachable moments for me when something kind of disastrous happens, and I can recorrect my course, and remember to listen to him and not get one marching order that things change. That's the kind of the thing. So God's telling you to do something. He may tell you to do something so that you have an experience, or you change in a way that he can use you better the next time, or that he can have a different outcome, or maybe you're supposed to fail because the people around you see how you react to failing. I mean, there's a lot to that. And as I get older and more mature, I guess, I don't know if that's less stupid would probably be a better way to describe it.
Oh man,
which is got to be some sort of wisdom. But although I feel like my brother got all the wisdom in our family. Do you guys have like my brother David, he's incredibly wise. And when he says things and the way he thinks about things, I recognize that wisdom, and it's something that I'm really jealous of. He's a pastor at Living Streams at Glendale and Central, and I have so much respect for him, but I also feel like he prayed somewhere and got my wisdom, because I don't feel like I have very much, but he's got a lot. And I don't know if my other brother would say that, my brother John, but it's an interesting thing. I'm always jealous of my brother's wisdom.
You feel like he pulled some kind of spiritual Jacob on you or something?
Yeah, no, I totally
snatched
feel like
your
totally feel like that.
snatch your wisdom.
I totally feel like that.
Oh
Absolutely.
man, that's funny. So it did
got all the good wisdom.
So that's good though. So spending a lot of time in the Word, that kind of help you discern like what God had for you in launching out on adventure.
So there's a lot of things that I do, and again, this goes to what we were talking about on the way over here. Is if you are looking for God, you will find God. If you are looking to not find God, you will not find God. I mean, it's a very basic principle in how I operate. Is if I'm not looking for God, then I'm not going to find him. So that pursuit of his voice, his direction, his will is And for sure, the Bible tells you, it gives you a great framework for what God looks like and what God wants and the directions that he goes and how he operates. But you can never really truly know God. There is a whole other section of looking for him in your life. And I very, very much believe that God has micromanaged the logistics around you. And that's one of his incredible powers is you are a product of the things that have happened to you. And those things that have happened to you are God. I don't know that if I drive out of here, I'm not going to get hit by a semi and then have to overcome that challenge, like in the ICU, all those kind of things. And God's going to use that. My father committed suicide, and I've seen my father use that as well. And it's just crazy. It's crazy how things. So my father committed suicide when I was 25. I was in South Africa. I flew back with my aunt. It was one of the worst things that has ever happened to me.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That's terrible.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And it's 25 years ago. I'm 50 now, so that's literally 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And when I was in Honduras, we had a surgeon come down with his son, and his son was trying to get into medical school and literally kind of in the same spot I was in, kind of drift, running his own boat into the rocks. And his dad drowned while we were there. It was actually a friend of my dad's. And so I got to ride home on the plane with the son, the surviving son, and his questions were the same questions I asked my aunt on the plane ride home from my father's suicide. And God gave me that moment with him to speak into his heart. And, I literally, it was redemption for my father's death.
Wow.
Just absolutely
right.
Full circle, completed, closed. Gave me a lot of a lot less anger at God for taking my dad, kind of thing. So, which I struggled with a lot before, and had mostly dealt with, but still had some little stuff. But now it's just part of the plan. It's part of God's plan. And the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And I fear God. And I don't mean that I fear God like I have a lot of respect for God, which I do. But I actually am afraid for what God is going to have me do in my life, or what things I'm going to have to endure for God. Like I'm not saying that word fear means what I think a lot of people translate it as like a respect. Like respect for God is kind of the beginning of all wisdom. I think
reverence.
Yeah, reverence. I think I actually am afraid of God.
Mm.
He is a giant and terrible and hard to understand being, and I also think that he's amazingly loving and set up this incredible plan to save us, and set part of himself, his son, down to be that sacrifice, to just show us absolutely how much we're worth. And I'm terrified of the guy too at the same time, which I think is wise, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. And I don't remember who I was listening to recently or what book I was reading, but it was, I do remember it was an author that I really respect, and they were speaking to the fear of the Lord. And it strikes me as you're saying what you're saying, that it is both and. He is tender. He is Papa. He is Abba. From our hearts we cry out, Abba, Father, Papa, because we've been given a spirit of sonship. And that is a beautiful, tender thing. And at the same time, he is this wild, powerful God. We were talking about it with Eric in the studio the other week. He is Aslan, right? That's a great picture of him, this wild, untamable God.
Right.
So it is deep mystery, unquestionably. Deep mystery. I don't know that we could do it justice. Yeah, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm thankful to hear for the redemption in that. And regardless of like what your theology is about the way that things work in the kingdom, like God's sovereignty and everything like that. I mean, that's like a whole theological can of worms, but you just can't get around that he causes all things to work together for good for those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. Like what you're saying, called according to his will. And I find it really fascinating that he came to you in such an intimate, loving way to usher you into the kingdom. That's really fascinating to me in your story. That is such a powerful piece. And I've been really sitting with just in wonder in this idea that salvation is essentially like a new love attachment to God. Like God becomes our how we all have our people, right? Like your families, like your tribe, your people. Depending on how you feel about your wife, she's your people. My wife's my people. But certainly that's how I look at my little tribe. And I think that you view yours the same way from what I've seen of the Stockton household. But like God is our ultimate people. We love him. He loves us. And it's the love of Christ that compels us, as Paul says, right? And it's really beautiful the way that he came for you through that little boy to form that attachment love bond that is the impetus for this like obedience that you have a strong heart desire. And I've heard you say this before, that you have this strong heart desire to be obedient to God. So anyways, deep stuff, really deep stuff. Anything kind of jumping out at you or that you want, anywhere you want to go with that?
So my dad used to say, if you love me, obey my commandments.
Your dad said that?
My dad used to say that all the time. And it's funny to me because that's one of the things that for sure when I think about obedience, I think about obeying God's commands. And if you're not listening for his voice, you can't hear his command. And so read your Bible, listen for God, look for God. And that really does shape who you're going to be and what next adventure you're going to be on.
All right. Well, we are going to break here with Peter's story. I think this is a good place to break in his story. One thing that I found particularly compelling was that story with the little boy who came and wrapped up Peter and said to him, I love you. I love you. I love you. It was such a powerful illustration of the love of the Father coming for Peter so fiercely, so intentionally, and so tenderly. And I think you're going to be curious to see the way that manifests in the rest of Peter's story and the way that plays itself out. So, but you're going to have to tune in next week for that. And I think you're going to love the rest of his story. Hey, if you're enjoying this podcast, we invite you to follow us, to share it with a friend, and to review us to get this message out there further. We really appreciate you joining us on the OG Original Glory podcast. Again, I'm your host, John Carlson. You can also check us out at originalglory.com, and we will see you next time.